fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I am joined today by debut filmmaker Seth Daly, who has his premiere film, The Rose, setting to be unleashed on FrightFest on August 25th. So, Seth, thanks so much for taking some time to speak with me.
Thank you, Matt. Good to be here.
Oh, it's
Thanks for having me.
excellent. It's a pleasure. And as I was saying before we hit record, it's nice to have someone else in the state of Ohio. We're talking to about horror, so always good to make those connections that are somewhat local, though we're about 4 hours apart.
Yeah, fellow Buckeyes got to stick together. So,
It's true. Well, I know we don't have all the time in the world, Seth, and I know you're probably preparing for your trip out to the UK, but um, wanted to ask, or are you going to the UK? Is maybe a better question. Are you going to the
I
premiere?
I am. I'm gonna be there. I'm a big aside from being a filmmaker, I'm a big movie buff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing as much as I can over there. And we're gonna have our premiere on the 25th. So that's I'm really looking forward to that. 790 seat theater at the Odeon Lux.
Wow.
So yeah, it's gonna be ripping. So
Oh man. Well, I hope you get a sellout crowd because just 790 people being able to watch your movie all at once, that's got to be some sort of bucket list dream right there.
yeah,
Um, but I'm curious to know a little bit more about you before we get into the rose.
yeah.
How did you, at what point did you realize, hey, I want to be a filmmaker and I want to make, horror slash genre movies?
Interesting question, two-part question. So the I've always been a writer since I was a kid, and then when I was a teenager, I became interested in acting, and so I did the thing that a lot of Midwesterners do. I started splitting time in LA, and you
Yeah.
go out for pilot season and all that good jazz, and then when I was out there, I started to become interested in not just movies as a medium for acting, but movies as an art form to themselves, and sort of dealing with movies in their own right. And especially that year when I moved there was like 2007, and that was a good year for movies with There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men and
Yeah.
Juno and a bunch of other great things. And so seeing a lot of that those sort of movies that I'd watched a lot of movies, but I hadn't necessarily watched those kind of movies, and
Mm.
those kind of movies sort of gave me the bug. And then I also happened to see Citizen Kane the very same year, and that'll kind of
Big
infect
year
you
for
with
you.
the directing bug. Well, yeah. And then the genre thing, I think I've always been drawn more to. I don't like the distinction really, but to genre versus sort of more straight dramatic fare, because I think there's it's people's taste, but I think that there's something you can deal with most of what you can deal with in drama in genre because it's
Yeah.
about human experience, but there's an extra fun factor to it. It's a sort of it's non-mundane. You can deal with circumstances you don't necessarily have in real life, but are more entertaining to watch, perhaps. And that was what I was always drawn to that. And from pulp and Western stuff when I was young, and science fiction and fantasy and all the above, and of course horror. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's funny, I've talked with other filmmakers about this before that like horror is really the only genre where it requires the inclusion of other genres. Like you
Mm,
don't have just a straight horror movie where it's just scary things happening all the time. Like there's always an
mm,
element of either comedy or drama. And it's not to
yeah.
say that that doesn't go the other way around with kind of dramas where they can incorporate action, but a horror, because it, as you said, deals with the human experience, does require the human element, which is in fact being dramatic and kind of having
Very
that
much.
level of emotional play or action or comedy that kind of adds either the levity or the weight to it to make it really impactful.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's so much subgenreing in horror, because you can say horror anything, and you can sort of conceive what that would be. Horror westerns, horror science
yep.
fiction, horror thrillers, and but there's also I also like straight up horror too, where I would consider like, okay, this is really trying to be horror. What would say Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist or something like that. But even then you could say, oh, it's a religious drama. For The Exorcist, it's like you could
Religious
subgenre
drama
as
with
well.
with
Yeah,
with demons.
yeah, horror religious drama or something. So
I mean, it's almost like Shaun of the Dead, right? I think their tagline was a romantic horror or romantic comedy with zombies.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, The Exorcist, it's a religious drama with demons. So,
right, right.
but The Rose is such an interesting film because one, you've done three things that a lot of filmmakers say are the hardest things to do, which is one, you worked with animals, worked with kids, and you worked on like on outside on location as opposed to kind of in a soundstage in a set. So I'm curious to know a little about kind of how you came up with the idea for the Rose and the production process once you kind of got the ball rolling.
Yeah, so the rose in particular was a both an artistic and a practical origin. So this is the sort of second or third thing I'd written to be a first movie. It's hard to get your first movie funded as a
Yep.
first-time director, and so it became a case of you write something and it's great, you really like it, but it's a little bit big to do, and then and then you see what resources you have available to you. So this one was spawned practically by, okay, I want to make a movie. What resources do I actually have available to me to make a movie? And I'll write something with those in mind. So the whole mentality of this movie was very pared down. And what is cinematic that doesn't cost anything? What cinematic that I have access to? And it's like, oh, cornfields, guns, masks, suspense,
Yep.
animals, those sorts of things. And so it was almost like a hardware store mentality to like, okay, what do you actually have to pay for to put on the screen something interesting? But then the artistic side of it was, being from the Midwest, we're surrounded by cornfields. They're all over the place, and though they're not. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with them. I was certainly familiar with them, and they were always sort of, especially at harvest time when they're gold, they kind of they evoke things to you.
Yeah.
You sort of wonder what you have these sort of primal images that would come to mind of, okay, what could be happening in there that's cinematic? What kind of characters could be lurking there? And from those sorts of images, you kind of in my process, you kind of like, okay, let's follow that thread. Let's be with this character and see, okay, if you're here, how do you get there and what do you find? And so that was the whole mentality for this one. And to, of course, build it on this, I wanted to be very minimal dialogue and very suspense driven, in the vein of No Country for Old Men or A Quiet Place or Don't Breathe, and building on that real robust Hitchcockian film grammar where you're with the heroine and seeing what she's seeing. So that was
I
the that
mean,
was the whole genesis. Yeah.
you've succeeded because one of the things I noted in, and I've already kind of written my review, for it, but obviously we hold it until embargo, so we've got the premiere and everything. But one of the things I first captured or first kind of picked up on is there's very little, if I think maybe less than 5 words are spoken in like the first 30 minutes of the film, something like that.
Mhm.
And but you don't feel at any point in time that you're waiting for the first word to drop or anything like that. It does have this kind of sense of there's an already inherent suspense that based off of just being dropped on this kind of cold open almost of entering this character in the situation. So I think you've done a fantastic job of mastering that cinematic grammar,
Mhm. Thank you.
because it's not easy one to kind of work within the limitations that independent films often do, but even more so, it's harder to make something perpetually interesting and have the right pace keep up with it because
Mm.
you're often working on lesser resources and trying to find novel ways to keep the action going without having the budget to blow things up per se.
Right.
Um, and you
You
know
pick your spots. You pick your spots to blow things up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you do have some pretty explosive scenes here. I mean, I think particularly the work you do with animals in here is like, really kind of grabs you by the throat, no pun intended, but I'm curious to know a little bit about kind of the production process when you started filming, particularly how long were you shooting for? And things like, what kind of challenges did you have to overcome? Because again, you're working outside, you're working with animals, kids, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think the main challenge was time. So, as most filmmakers will tell you, so it wasn't so much the that you couldn't get the physical things you needed. It was more that do you have enough time to really craft what you need carefully and get everything that's on your shot list. And so we shot for 18 days. So we were moving pretty
Yeah,
quickly, and
fast.
we shot on film. So we weren't doing a ton of takes on anything. We were really turning it over and moving from one thing to the next. It was a very planned out movie. There's not a lot of fat on the movie, so I think there's maybe one, there's a few setups, but maybe like one half of a scene that's not in the movie from what we shot.
Oh,
But
wow.
pretty, yeah. So it was very very what was planned, and it was more about the biggest challenge I had was you couldn't really do a lot of detail initially because you really had to keep moving and you had to get the broad strokes, just tell the story. But then there's all of these sort of all these sort of cinematic things, all these grace notes that you want
Yeah.
to pepper into the symphony. And so I actually ended up getting some pickups after the fact, which pushed our release time back a little bit because we had to wait for the corn to get ripe again. And so we shot for 3 weeks and got all that and got most of the movie, and then cut that together and then supplemented it after the fact. And I'm really pleased that we did, because it really sort of between both periods really came together closer to what I wanted. So and then we were obviously we had a pretty small crew, pretty great crew. There, a lot of them were from Albuquerque, some of them were local, and just they had a lot of challenges that they had to deal with. Like our Steadicam operator Nolan Rudy, we just sort of worked him to death because he's carrying this 50-pound camera running up and down the rows with a Steadicam. And the thing with shooting in a cornfield is it's a little bit like shooting in a library. So once you're in it, you can see up and down the rows, but you can't really see across very far.
Yeah.
And you also can't move across very far. So and then the rows are not very wide apart, maybe 30 inches or so. So you're always sort of, a little claustrophobic in there, but
I mean,
it's worth it once you see the movie.
you make great use of that though. There's a particular scene where Lucy is kind of hiding from one of the masked assailants, and you use that environment so well to give, like, based on her size and her ability to kind of squeeze through the rows,
Hmm.
but how she has almost the edge on the people that are pursuing her because she's shorter in stature. She can move around a little bit more quickly, more quietly. So I think what you've done, like, I think when we think of cornrows in the context of horror, the first thing that always comes to, I think, most people's mind is the Children of the Corn,
Hmm.
things that are very visceral, very supernatural. But this is more taking, I think, a grounded approach to that, where you're focusing on how do we use the cornrows as a way to kind of obfuscate, this really awful situation, and how do we use it to help someone who's maybe at an advantage by being due to their size, being able to work through it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that was very much part of the script too. Is everything was this particular script was very spelled out, so like and in time, so every moment was sort of registered in the script, and so you very much feel like the geography of the space that she's inhabiting. And the thing too, you mentioned like you feel like you're in it with her. I think that similar to not that you're on that level, but similar to what happened with Jaws, where they couldn't get as many shark shots as they wanted to, but it kind of has this effect of maybe the shark is a little scarier because you don't see him as
yeah.
often. The same with the rose. When you're maybe we didn't get as many shots, high up or outside of the rows that we might have wanted to see geography. But the effect of that is that you're with the character and you don't really see what she's not seeing.
Right.
I think it really worked out well.
And it also creates a sense of vastness that I think might have been diminished if you get the full view, right? It's
Hmm.
like if you, because even at one point, the character says, like, you're never going to get out of the rows, and you're never going to get out of the corn, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think that is what most people feel when they're in a cornfield, is like, oh my goodness, I have no sense, my sense of direction's lost. I don't know
Hmm.
how far it stretches in any direction. So I think you use that, really effectively. Again, it's not so much about being uh, being what's in the rows as much as, like, how do we get out of it? And
Right.
you
Yeah.
also have a lot of strong females in this film, and I think one of the things that we we are seeing more of, which I think is a good sign, is this kind of notion of not so much trying to make characters that are based on stereotypes, but really just characters that exist as people that have flaws, they have strengths, they have challenges, but you've got three, women here are pretty much our protagonists. Obviously, you have the main one, Lucy. Why was it important that, first that these were female characters, but also that you kind of gave them this real strong sense of agency as a default? Like, they didn't earn that. They are that way.
Well, I think that just sort of naturally came out of the script. And I was also, Lucy is her own ball of wax because I really had a kind of, I keep saying that I was kind of looking for superhero energy out of Lucy because you just practically with the scenario, you really need a very capable little girl
Yeah,
to be able to do it. You need that on the part of the actress, and you need that on the part of the character. You need to feel like this is maybe plausible for her to survive this circumstance because it's very harrowing, and so that sort of spilled over naturally into the family too, to some degree, and the circumstances, either people fold or fly under
right.
the circumstances, and like they needed to fly, so they needed to have some formidability. And I was also thinking, in terms of references and things, I was also like the whole farmhouse part of it. I had sort of classic westerns in mind there a little bit, and the thing with classic westerns is you always have these, not always, it depends on the movie, but when they appear, you have these very hard-bitten, courageous frontier women who are, confronted with the land, confronted with external threat, and have to, they can't just call the cops because the cops are 16 hours away
Yeah,
or whatever, and
by
so they've
horse,
got to.
right?
Right, exactly. So they got to fend for themselves, and so we were really giving that same approach to the mom, to the sister, and to Lucy, and sort of treating that farmhouse as if it's like a, like a house on the prairie, and the cornfields are sort of the mesquite bushes, and you know that sort of
You
thing. And you can even see, like, there's a shot where Laura Pictet, who plays Kalia, the mom, she comes out and gets her laundry in the morning and just being about her business. And there's a few shots in there where you can see some Ford influence for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great scene, and I forget exactly when it happens. If it's not Kalia that goes out front first, but then they see like the people, like the masked assailants coming through the rows, like, and they're
Mhm.
just kind of standing there, and it's just so. Again, there's not a lot of dialogue to it, but I think the images speak for themselves, and that you're seeing like, wow, this is a siege movie now, and like it was a chase. Now we have a siege movie, and I think you kind of bring a lot of those different genres together in kind of one cohesive whole, which again makes the film consistently entertaining because you're kind of watching one set piece from another. And you also don't pull any punches with these characters. Like, obviously we're not going to go into any spoilers here, but you really, I think people's expectations will be turned a little bit on their heads as to what they expect will happen to a lot of these characters.
Mm,
Because I think that's something in horror that makes it so interesting is that, or thrillers, is that you don't always know what's going to happen to these people, and you should worry about them to some extent.
for sure. Everybody is fair game. So we'll
Yep.
see. Mm.
Well, my last question for you. I've been told it's a difficult one, but I still think it's a fun question to ask. Is if you were asked to program a double feature with The Rose as being one of those films, what do you think would make a really fun or good companion piece to go to the theater and see with it?
That is a very cool question. It's tempting to just go straight to the movies that are, the most influential on it.
Sure.
You could point to No Country. You could point to even The Town That Dreaded Sundown or something where it has some iconographic
Yeah.
similarity. I think what might be kind of cool is actually, it's a very different genre, but I think it might be kind of cool to put Hondo with it,
Oh, yeah.
the 50s Western, because that it's a very different tone, and you can sort of be a palate cleanser after that. So it might not be the most high octane double feature, but it would be a cool left curveball.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a lot of fun, and I even think even like a Lone Wolf and Cub film,
Oh
it's kind of
yeah,
has
that'd be
that
great.
same sense
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like, you know, parents and children kind of fighting against the evils of the world. Although it's a bit, I'd say Lone Wolf and Cub's a bit more silly, uh,
right.
than the Roses. But yeah, I mean, I'd watch either of those double features. I'd definitely watch Hondo with this as well because
Yeah,
Westerns are underrated, and hopefully are getting back some relevance.
very much.
But Seth,
But if you're going for horror, you got to do like, A Quiet Place or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, or
Or
even, I mean.
Town that Dreaded Sundown. I did that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And either the remake or the old one. I think either one of them could
Yeah.
go, or Night of the Scarecrow, maybe, because you do some, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's some surprises in the rows
Yeah.
that we know didn't see
Or
coming.
or Pan's Labyrinth. We'll do
Oh,
that has some thematic similarities. Yeah.
now you're speaking my love language, Seth, because
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth is very close to being my favorite film. It's in that five, your top five kind of shift around based on where you are in your life. But it's always
Yeah.
kind of ruminating in that space. But
Nice.
I gotta say, Seth, it's been just a pleasure having a conversation with you. I'm so happy to see not only, someone from Ohio going to make a great film, but also that you're getting the chance to play it on the massive 790 seats, theater at Fright Fest. So We'll be sure to, to get our review out and try and push as many people to the theaters we can. But I really look forward to not just what you're doing now, but also whatever you do next. So
Well,
please
thank you
stay in
very much.
touch.
Yeah, and come out and see us at Horror Hound as well. And since if you're in Ohio, come and see us at Cincinnati. It's September
I'm gonna
12th.
try. I'm gonna
Yeah,
try
yeah,
because I'm going to Fantastic Fest in Austin like a week after
nice.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I can make it work, I'm gonna head down there. But I will definitely let you know. And again, congrats again on the film. Congrats on Fright Fest. I hope you have the best time.
Thank you very much.